Hey, fifth grade, it is me again, Miss Mongell. So we have talked about founding of the Southern colonies. Today we're going to focus more on what life was like in those Southern colonies. In good weather, farming is easier and more profitable. The southern region has mild weather all year. That made it easy for planters in the southern colonies to raise crops. They grew cotton, tobacco, indigo, rice, sugarcane, and more. But they didn't do it alone. The slave trade brought in tens of thousands of enslaved Africans. Using slave labor, a single landholder could farm large areas and make lots of money. Southern planters grew very rich, but enslaved people saw none of the profits of their labor. The lives of wealthy planters were very different from the lives of enslaved people. Some large southern plantations look like small villages. The main building on the plantation was the planter's house. The planter owned the plantation. The overseer, who supervised enslaved workers, often had a house on the plantation as well. Cabins housed the enslaved people. Other buildings might include barns, blacksmith shops, warehouses, stables, and outbuildings used for carpentry, weaving, or other tasks. Farms and plantations were not the only industries that profited from slave labor. Enslaved people worked in the lumber and naval stores industries too. Slavery became institutionalized, or part of a formal system. It became the backbone of the South's economy. A select group of landholders grew richer and richer off the forced labor of others. Because of the slave trade, enslaved Africans kept coming to the English colonies. People enslaved on plantations were treated harshly. They were overworked and neglected. The planters who claimed ownership of them saw them as replaceable and treated them like they weren't human. The planters' main goal was profit. The less money they spent caring for people they enslaved, the more they had to run their businesses and live lives of luxury. The Southern planters relied on labor of slaves and saw slavery as their right. Others disagreed. The Age of Enlightenment in the late 17th and 18th centuries inspired the idea of natural rights of man. Enlightenment thinkers saw slavery as an enemy for those rights. Meanwhile, Quakers began to see slavery as opposed to their Christian values. Quaker leaders such as Anthony Benzett and John Woolman worked to free slaves. They convinced Quakers to set their slaves free. Only a few Southern farmers ran large plantations. Most had small farms, and those farmers were never as wealthy as plantation owners. They worked their own fields and lived in small houses with little or no furniture. Some small farmers had one or two enslaved people, but they shared in the work. Virginia grew to be the largest English colony in North America. In 1699, it moved its government to Williamsburg. Virginia's House of Burgesses was the first legislative or lawmaking assembly in the colonies. It played an important part in the move towards independence. Some of its elected members were Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, and even George Washington. They went on to play defining roles in the birth of a new nation. Maryland had started as a safe haven for Catholics, yet the colony accepted other Christian denominations. The Tolerations Act of 1639 and 1649 granted religious freedoms to most of their Christians. Political and religious struggles arose in the colony for the next 60 years or so. Still, Maryland remained a home to those looking for freedom to live accordingly to their beliefs.